Oh, I'm ready for this. Released in November of 2004, I've gone on record a few times in the past on social media about my nostalgic love for this movie beforehand. And now, with this being the film's 20-year anniversary, I figured no better time than on this very November in Bikini Bottom than to talk about it in greater detail. I've also mentioned before how me and my older brother unfortunately did not see this movie in theaters because, we were poor growing up, but thankfully that did not stop us from picking this thing up on home video as soon as we could. And as huge SpongeBob fans, myself especially, we ate this thing up like a dozen Krabby Patties on a Wednesday. Points to any fans out there who gets what that's specifically referencing. It also goes without saying that, despite many of my peers having said opportunities to see this film in theaters before we did, me and my friends quoted this film for years. Hell, my childhood best friend and I still occasionally quoted and referenced this film well into our high school days. That's how much this movie truly meant to us, even as SpongeBob himself undeniably continued to be dragged through the mud even to this very day. However, I must now ask the age-old question, both as a more wise and mature movie buff and as a longtime SpongeBob fan, does this film still manage to hold itself well above the surface years later? Well, that's what we're here to find out. So, let's go ahead and end November in Bikini Bottom with the SpongeBob Squarepants Movie. The film begins, interestingly enough, with a live-action sequence involving pirates finding a treasure chest containing tickets to the SpongeBob Squarepants movie. And as they set sail, singing an admittedly catchy version of the classic SpongeBob theme, they arrive at the theater acting pretty much how you would most likely expect pirates arriving at a movie theater would act like. I honestly do like this idea of the SpongeBob movie being a movie within a movie, as it does sort of showcase just how insanely popular SpongeBob was for its time, metaphorically speaking. And I will be honest with you, if me and my brother had tickets to see this movie back then, you could bet your ass we would be acting a lot like these pirates are in this opening sequence. Unfortunately though, this whole movie within a movie idea ends up feeling kind of pointless as, spoiler alert for the rest of the movie, they only appear 2 other times throughout the movie. One is at the midway point, and the other is in a post-credit scene, but we'll get to those here in a bit. Getting back to the movie in question, as in the actual SpongeBob movie, we begin at the Krusty Krab as apparently a crime has occurred where a customer's order went horribly wrong, and it's here that SpongeBob, who is now the manager rocking a pair of sick-ass boots, goes in to fix the situation. I just love how this whole entire scene is played like a bomb expert trying to save a hostage from an act of domestic terrorism. And it's just SpongeBob fixing a customer's order by placing cheese in a Krabby Patty. It's so over-the-top ridiculous that, honestly, I just can't help but have a big dumb smile on my face, especially with how bizarrely straight SpongeBob plays it in this scene as well. Getting back to the film at hand, as you might have guessed at this point, this is ultimately a dream as an eager SpongeBob, at least more eager than usual, gets ready for work as Krabs is officially opening up a new restaurant which is not only literally just named the Krusty Krab 2, but even funnier than that, is built right next door to the original because of, well, you guessed it, money! And alongside that, SpongeBob is very hopeful, especially based on his 374 consecutive Employee of the Month awards, which, for those who can do the math, would very much so imply that he's been working at the Krusty Krab for over 30 years. That he'll be made the new manager. Before SpongeBob heads off, however, he pays a quick visit to his neighbor Squidward to tell him something, or rather, I should say. Hey, police? Yeah, I want to report on a man who just broke into another person's house and is washing them in their shower without their consent. 5 minutes? Okay, that's fine. Seriously though, what the hell was that? After that rather questionable scene, and after SpongeBob and Patrick make a brief preemptive celebration dancing to the Goofy Goober song, which will come into play quite a few times throughout the entire movie, as you'll soon see, he finally heads off to the ceremony where he very literally runs right into Plankton.
Ooh, I think I stepped in something.
Oh yeah, and I almost forgot to mention, as the ceremony progresses, Plankton gets absolutely frustrated with all the press that Mr. Krabs has been getting, leading to this admittedly really funny moment.
Don't get worked up again, Plankton. I just mapped the floors.
This is another one of those jokes from the old days of SpongeBob back then that I didn't really get, but now as an adult I find not only really funny, but honestly, in a way, kind of relatable. And don't judge me, you've done it too, you know. Anyways, wanting to really stick it to Mr. Krabs and to also finally have Bikini Bottom under his own fingertips, he enacts Plan Z, complete with yet another adult joke, which, compared to the last one, I feel is a bit outdated considering the more modern and convenient ways in which people are able to consume you know what. Meanwhile, as the ceremony announcing the new manager is underway, we get a brief appearance from both Sandy and Mrs. Puff, and, well, don't get used to them because they're barely in this movie. Yeah, that's possibly the biggest criticism most longtime fans tend to have about this movie, and how the previously mentioned established characters from the show feel incredibly wasted. And while I can't say that I personally disagree with said criticism, I can also understand what Steven Hillenburg and his team intended. After all, it is called The SpongeBob Squarepants Movie. With a title like that, I expect to mainly focus on, you know, SpongeBob and his journey. Speaking of, I'll talk a little bit more about said journey later and why I feel this is important for the film, so just try to keep that in the back of your mind. Getting back to the story, SpongeBob is 100% confident in being picked as the aforementioned manager of the new establishment, but Krabs instead chooses his co-worker Squidward Tentacles instead. He of course tries to explain to SpongeBob that as a kid, he is too immature to be able to properly handle the job. Despondent, SpongeBob heads to the Goofy Goober ice cream parlor later that evening, immediately after which Patrick flies in and... yeah, they just had to remind us that this is still a Nickelodeon movie at the end of the day. All the while, Plankton sneaks into King Neptune's castle where, inside, King Neptune himself, voiced by Jeffrey Tambor, is attempting to punish his latest subject who, as it turns out, is the royal crown polisher for touching said crown. However, his more intelligent and compassionate daughter Princess Mindy, voiced by Scarlett Johansson in her first voice acting role, and trust me, as this film progresses, you'll soon see it really shows, stops him and tries to tell him to show a little more love and compassion for his subjects instead of making them suffer these harsh and, let's be quite frank here, very unneeded punishments. Of course, the more hot-tempered and tyrannical King Neptune tries to explain to his daughter by showing her the crown and its importance.
One day, you will wear this crown.
I'm gonna be bald?
Sending!
Yeah, that's the big running gag in this movie, and to be fair, it does lead to a few genuinely funny moments as the film progresses. After this happens, we see SpongeBob at the previously mentioned ice cream parlor brooding over his loss. Patrick arrives, thinking SpongeBob is the manager, which, sadly, only serves to make him feel worse. He is then told the truth about SpongeBob being too young, apparently, to be given the position, and SpongeBob starts to head home after that, until Patrick orders a triple gooberberry sunrise, and they begin to eat dozens upon dozens upon dozens of sundaes, continuously demanding more and more. The two soon become drunk from all the ice cream, and pass out in the restaurant overnight soon after, experiencing hangover-like symptoms the following morning, such as a splitting headache. Yes, this is all very real. SpongeBob and Patrick literally get drunk off of ice cream. It's really telling of how absolutely naive I was as an 8-year-old that I didn't get this back then, but honestly, that's one of the many things I respect old school SpongeBob for, in that as lighthearted as it can be, it was not afraid to still incorporate some very notable adult jokes and themes. SpongeBob soon remembers why he fell into a drunken stupor and is about to lay the metaphorical smackdown on Mr. Krabs. Before he can do that, however, King Neptune arrives at the Krusty Krab after receiving evidence planted by Plankton of Mr. Krabs stealing said crown, which is of that of a note. Neptune threatens Krabs, who denies any involvement in the theft, and then of course, this happens.
Hi, Mr. Krabs, this is Clay, the guy you sold Neptune's crown to. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks again for selling me the crown. Neptune's crown, Neptune's crown. Which is now in Shell City. Goodbye.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
I will say, for all the criticisms that can be made of Scarlett Johansson's performance, and don't get me wrong, there is definitely plenty to criticize there, I feel the other celebrities in this, from Jeffrey Tambor's over-the-top performance, I feel definitely more than makes up for that. And thankfully, he's not the only celebrity who gives a solid performance, but we'll get to that here in a bit. And speaking of which, SpongeBob comes in and badmouths Mr. Krabs, as you might expect, and after he sees that King Neptune intends on killing him for stealing said crown, mostly because of, well... Oh, how some internet memes will never die. Anyways, Mindy comes in, and as Neptune is ready to roast both SpongeBob and Krabs, yeah, it's safe to say she had a long way to go as a voice actor. And as you're about to see, it only gets more and more awkward. Neptune reluctantly agrees and initially orders SpongeBob to be back with said crown in 10 days.
He can do it in 9, 8, 7, 6, 6 it is then.
6 days, all while freezing Krabs in place so that he can't escape. After that, SpongeBob and Patrick make their way to the Paddy Wagon, a vehicle which was shown in quite a lot of the marketing for this film, and with that, their journey has begun. Not too long after their departure, Plankton enacts the next phase of the plan by, for the very first time ever, successfully stealing the Krabby Patty formula for himself, leaving Krabs to shed only a frozen tear in defeat. Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick soon reach a gas station located on the county line of Bikini Bottom, where the hillbilly owners laugh at them, finding the duo and their vehicle stupid. I mean, I can't say they're 100% wrong on that one. After the Paddy Wagon is carjacked almost immediately thereafter by a thug who just so happened to be waiting right on the other side of the county line, they continue on foot just as the other part of Plan Z is finally put into effect, with Plankton not only giving away bucket helmets along with Krabby Patty purchases over at the Chum Bucket, but knowing that SpongeBob and Patrick being potentially successful in their mission can out him as the real suspect, he sends a terrifying hitman after our heroes. And yeah, remember when I was mentioning that other celebrity about a minute ago? Yeah, say what you will about Alec Baldwin nowadays, especially with the heat that he's gotten himself into recently, but he does a really good job here as Dennis. Our heroes, knowing that they won't succeed in their mission in time without the car, go in the bar where said car is conveniently parked to get the key, only for things to get a bit more complicated with the thug leader suspecting someone is a bubble-blowing baby, his words not mine, because of our heroes creating bubbles through the bathroom soap dispenser. This leads to a humorous scene where said leader tries finding the culprit by having the DJ play the Goofy Goober song, which both SpongeBob and Patrick, as you might have guessed, have a hard time not singing along with. The thug leader sees and acknowledges this, and in a bit of a dick move, he taunts them to provoke them into giving in. Just as it seems like they're about to lose it, a Siamese twin thug sings to the song, and the other thugs begin beating the crap out of them, allowing SpongeBob and Patrick to retrieve the key unharmed amid the confusion and escape. The very next day, Squidward sees that everyone is wearing said bucket helmets. As he confronts Plankton about this, Squidward figures out that Plankton was the one who stole King Neptune's crown in order to get the Krabby Patty formula after having Mr. Krabs framed for the crime. He threatens to report this to the king, but before he can do that, Plankton presses a button on Karen's base, which kinda sounds a little sus when I put it that way. The button in question activates a mind control device, revealing that the bucket helmets themselves are in fact mind controlling helmets. Squidward tries to escape, but the enslaved citizens corner him and capture him, and off-screen turn him into a slave as well, taking down the last opposition to Plankton, who of course gloats that there is no one left to stop him. Oh, if only he knew. During their continued journey, our heroes stop to pick up some ice cream at a nearby ice cream stand. However, when SpongeBob goes to pick up the order, the old woman running the stand is revealed to just be, part of the tongue of a monstrous frogfish using the ice cream stand as bait. Said frogfish chases the scared fleeing duo, who eventually drive off a cliff and jump out of it in the nick of time as said frogfish eats the paddy wagon, only to be subsequently eaten himself by a larger sea serpent that appears from the trenches below. Upon recovering from the shock of what they just went through, complete with a face that's also been memed to death at this point, SpongeBob mutters that they've lost their car again, only this time, they've lost it completely. I would say that it's odd that a car that was in a lot of the marketing was barely even in the movie at all, but let's not kid ourselves, that's pretty much the common practice in American cinema these days. Just as they're ready to give up and head home, SpongeBob especially, Mindy arrives and shows them what has happened to Bikini Bottom since they were away. And as you might have guessed, Neptune is too caught up in his own priorities to do jack shit about it. Oh, by the way, remember when I said earlier in the video that me and my childhood best friend quoted and referenced this movie a lot? Well, this is probably the one part that me and him referenced a lot, even in high school.
Squire, will you hurry?
It's stupid, yes, but I still think it's funny, so sue me. Upon seeing all this, SpongeBob and Patrick give in to despair and cry in a very over-the-top fashion, complete with a little bit of gross-out humor, but not before we get to see some really incredibly awkward deliveries from Scarlett Johansson.
Hey, it doesn't matter if you're kids, and what's so wrong with being a kid anyway? Kids rule! You don't need to be a man to do this. You just gotta believe in yourself.
Look, I'm sure she tried her best, all things considered, but it's just so uncomfortable to listen to, especially after hearing her performance in films like Isle of Dogs. Mindy, in an effort to lift their spirits up, gives them fake mustaches in the form of seaweed, convincing them that they are in fact men. SpongeBob and Patrick end up passing through the trenches without any fear, all while singing the admittedly catchy Now That We're Men. But they meet up with Dennis on the other side of said trench, and he tells them that he was hired to exterminate them by Plankton. Initially, the two laugh off his threat, but he rips off their fake mustaches and explains to them that they are not really men at all and prepares to kill them, where he also inadvertently reveals, like I said just a second ago, that Plankton was the true stealer of the crown and that he hired to off them. However, before he can literally crush them under his boot, an even bigger boot comes out of nowhere and crushes Dennis and is revealed to be the monster Cyclops that was mentioned earlier, who is really just a scuba diver wearing an old-fashioned suit with a Cyclops-styled helmet. SpongeBob and Patrick try to run for it, but the Cyclops ultimately abducts the duo and takes them back to his lair. I'm not gonna lie, this scene legit terrified me when I was a kid. From the composition of the shots, the haunting lighting, to this final shot in the scene with the Cyclops slowly walking away with our heroes literally in his grasp that goes on for about 30 seconds. And the score on top of all that just makes this final shot in particular all the more eerie and uncertain. Just listen.